Deadline by Yahoo Sports Jordan Shusterman. And Jordan, we want to talk about Cal. We're going to talk about the rest of this Yankees series and the upcoming one against the Tigers for the Mariners. But before we do, I was listening to Baseball Barbiecast. And you guys were talking about the All-Star nominations and noting that some of these are player nominated. And you said, look, Julio was a controversial one, but there has to be something to be said for getting that many player votes. I thought it was an interesting point. What did you make of Julio's All-Star nod?
Yeah, I think it was interesting. I think you can kind of read a lot and a little into the player selected All-Stars because on one hand, it's like, wow, that's clearly, reflective of how his peers view him. And again, we sort of speculated this on the show, but I think timing is also important. And I really don't know how long ago this was voted on, but also in Julio's case, I mean, let's be real. It's not like he has been a consistent offensive force earlier in the season. Maybe he's, that with the OPS dropping into the 600s, I think it stands out. But I don't know. I also think that it shows how much respect he's earned from his peers. I do think that it's like he is still viewed as like, well, yeah, of course, like Julio's an all-star. And that also probably means that they're not paying as close attention to what his OPS is, and that's fine, but that's part of the process, and that's how he ends up an all-star. And I think on total value, if you look at WAR and stuff like that, yeah, he's still been one of the best players in the league, and it's also a pretty weak AL outfield crop, all things considered, and I think that contributed to it as well.
Hey, we're trying to figure out what's going on with Logan. He hasn't gone deeper than 5 innings this year. Obviously, he got banged up earlier in the season. Was it the delay yesterday? Was it his arm? What are you seeing out of him? I looked at his numbers. The velocity's down just a little bit, but nothing too concerning. What's your take on Logan and what we're seeing out of him?
Yeah, it's definitely been, it's good to see him coming back. I mean, that injury was pretty scary, and I think people were definitely fearing a lot worse. I think I'm glad you mentioned the velocity there because I think that is also something that unfortunately we saw with Bryce Miller, where the velocity was kind of fine, but it just wasn't quite right. And I think in Logan's case, with the time that he missed, still kind of shaking it off, we have to hope and assume that he is in good enough physical condition to continue and be a part of this rotation moving forward. But it's also not unreasonable to think that he's still not at his best, whether that's from just a sharpness standpoint or physically compromised, even if it's in a subtle way. I think that can make a difference. And it's not a fun thought, but I also think that it's not always as simple as is his velocity okay? There's a lot of other things that go into what makes pitchers great. And when you're coming off an injury like that, I don't think it's a small thing to just expect, or I don't think it's realistic to expect him to just click right back into it, unfortunately.
Jordan, I think there are a lot of Mariners fans who would love to see a familiar face, Suarez, back here in Seattle. He was beloved when he was here, a fan favorite, and is also raking with Arizona. 2 questions for you. Do you think Arizona will trade Gino, and do you think they should?
Yeah, I mean, Arizona is really tough, and they are certainly on those handful of teams that as we look towards the deadline and we say, all right, like, are you in or out here? Because I think, if they were in the American League, I'm sure they could tell themselves, no, we still got a chance. Oh, none of these teams are very good. But it's a little bit more crowded in the NL. I still feel like that front office is not quite wired to go in the other direction, but they're also not stupid, and they understand with the roster construction that they have, with the number of pending free agents that they have, it would be a little weird to kind of go half measures. Now, you could say, oh, maybe it's easier for them to replace a Suarez in the short term with a guy like Jordan Lawler. I know he's been dealing with some injuries, than it would be to replace, trading several of their pitchers. But I don't know. To me, either they're going to go for it or they are going to trade, 3 or 4 guys. And I still think it's too early to tell whether that's which direction they're going.
If Gino were to rejoin this ball club, obviously he'll be at third base. He's a good glove, a solid bat. What happens with Williamson? Because he's putting together a decent rookie campaign.
Yeah, I mean, I think people would understand that it would be a temporary thing. I don't think it's like, all right, Gino's back forever. And I think in the case of Williamson, he has acquitted himself quite well. But also it would be a very straightforward, like, listen, you still have not played very much minor league baseball. And for as much as he's given the team, over these last few months in a very impressive way, sending him back to AAA to continue to work on stuff is not unreasonable. You could also argue, does he make, and I would guess that would be the case if they do acquire a third baseman, just because he's someone they do believe is a big part of their long-term plans, and having him get only a handful of at-bats a week is not necessarily best for his development. He needs to be playing and seeing as much pitching as possible. So I don't think that would be he's been impressive within the context of what they're asking of him, but it's not like he's a bat that you can't take out of the lineup. I mean, Suarez would obviously be a huge upgrade, and so I think sending it back to AAA in the scenario where they get a clear-cut third baseman is not the worst thing in the world.
How did Cal become Barry Bonds? Seeing him, I mean, not literally, obviously, if that's the conversation, really, maybe we should be talking about Aaron Judge. But Cal hitting his 36th home run is a new franchise record for the Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners have not had a lot of bats like this. So here in Seattle, Jordan, I just want to add additional context, as you know, that it's just kind of crazy to see anytime you have a national story at all or someone breaking records at all, it's a big deal. So on the one hand, Cal's had seasons prior to this of leading all catchers in home runs. On the other, I'm fascinated by the minor adjustments you can make that lead to such monumental payoff.
Yeah, and I've talked about it a little bit on here in past weeks, but yeah, he is so good at getting the ball in the air. But again, I mean, the part we talk about Aaron Judge and why he's still so far ahead in the MVP conversation, that's because he's hitting 360. But let's not overlook Cal hitting 268. I mean, that is an astonishing thing. It's not just that he, has already passed his career high in homers, but, he only had 16 doubles all of last year. He's got 16 this year. Mm-hmm. So there's other parts of his game and just the batting average where we were all ready to accept that, he's probably never, going to hit above 230 or 240, and that's fine if he's hitting 330 homers. And that was true. But now the strikeouts are going down. The strikeouts rate is now below 25%. He's, of course, walking more than ever. Now, that has to do with how he's swinging. Of course, it's not just a impressive approach. I mean, teams are at this point just genuinely scared of him, as they should be. But, like I said, he has the power and is getting the ball in the air, especially to the pull side, better than anybody else in the sport.
I think one of the things that fans look at is how Dan Wilson kind of manages a game. You have that rain delay. You go back inside for about an hour. Logan's doing his best to stay warm. He was about 70 pitches in or whatnot. The text line is about 70-30 people saying, I don't think Logan should have been out there. Granted, the Yankees put their starter back out there as well. What do you say to Dan's decision to let Logan go out there and try to finish an inning or two?
Yeah, that was a tough one. I'd probably lean a little bit more towards he shouldn't be out there. You just had an off day. The bullpen should be fresh. I would also argue this in the context of going to Legumina in that spot. There's been a few moments this season where the game is maybe close. And listen, I know Legumina's had his moments, but there seem to have been moments where they just kind of let the game slip away with one pitcher who clearly is not having it, as opposed to trying to continue to pitch with a chance to come back. And especially when the offense has, of course, been better. I know there have been in years past where it's okay, they're down by 4, the game's over. That's not the case anymore. And so it's been a little bit disappointing sometimes, putting out maybe some of the lower leverage relievers in some bigger spots and then just kind of letting them wear it for seemingly no reason. That was a little bit frustrating. As for Logan, an hour rain delay is tough. I think different teams view it differently, and teams know their guys better than ever. Now, I think most pitchers are going to try to fight to go back out there, but I think that's probably a situation where you go to the pen after the delay.
I have the hardest time, Jordan, just gauging how much control, impact a manager has in today's game. And we have these legacy managers that we assume have a lot of control, but it's certainly not the majority of managers. It doesn't have to be a particular name that comes to mind, or perhaps it is. But is there a guy around a league or a prototype where you think, God, when I look at a team that's doing really well, this is when I take the manager into account, because it does make a difference?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've gone back and forth with this. I had to think about this a lot last year when I had a vote for NL Manager of the Year, and I went with Pat Murphy like everyone else did, but I don't know, like, and here we are again. The Brewers are kind of surging again, and are maybe going to get back into the mix here. And that one, from a narrative standpoint, just really stood out, right? You assume, oh, they lose Craig Counsell, he's the best manager in baseball, he's getting this record contract, and then what happens, right? The Cubs fall on their face, and the Brewers are awesome. And was it all because of the managers? Probably not, but there's something to be said about that. I don't know. It really is hard, and I still struggle with it. I think the managers that stand out are the ones that seem to have a very clear alignment with their organization. And I think I bring up that word partially in joking reference to the Red Sox, who used their word alignment a lot in their post-Rafael Devers trade press conference. But I also mention that because Alex Cora is someone who I think the league views as a pretty good manager, but clearly there have been situations recently where he is not on the same page as the Boston Red Sox front office. And so, we're going to see a team like the Tigers this weekend. Like, that's a team where it is very clear that AJ Hinch is on the same page with his front office, and how that whole team and roster operates is very much funneled through the way that AJ Hinch wants to do things. And I think that that's a great example of that.
I assume you've heard the potential trade proposal for Acuña, right? I don't think it's going to happen. Obviously, it'd be nice. You're only paying, $17 million for the next couple of years. You're going to give up the farm for this dude. And a dream of mine, of course, would be to acquire Acuña. I don't think it's going to go down. What do you think it would take to get him, and how unlikely is it that the Mariners have that in play?
I think the simplest way to put it is that the Mariners are indeed the team best positioned to do this, and it is not going to happen. So if you want, they are. If someone was to put together a realistic proposal for Ronald Acuña, that would be one of the first teams you would pick to do it. That said, I think for as catastrophic as this year has been for Atlanta, trading Acuña is basically the only thing. Like, if you had to pick something that would make the Braves fans more mad, because at this point they're so angry,
livid.
Rightfully so. And they could trade probably literally anybody else, and I think the fans would be like, yeah, screw that guy, get him out of here. I think Acuña is not that. He's the only one where I don't really see any way in which that would be a positive move for the short term or long term, and certainly from a PR perspective in the midst of a very, very, very bad season for them.
You know what's so funny about that, though, and I apologize that this isn't straight a question and it's more of just a back and forth, but it's making me think of this, is I agree with you, and I'm sure Bump agrees with you too, that we're both like, yeah, we'd make the move, you'd love to see it happen, but it's not going to happen. And the reason that I think both of us have at least enjoyed talking about it is it's just a hypothetical about valuing prospects over major league talent, and kind of the balance of, as fans, I would imagine, of any team, you tend to not only prioritize your own players, but value your own players. And Jordan, I can't tell you how many responses I've seen. I would say it's 40, 60 against trading away those prospects. So there's still a majority of Mariners fans who are absolutely throw in whoever, I don't care. But do you find, I'm just curious about what you think about the phenomenon that we just have in general of not understanding the very obvious value of a proven asset in the big league level, and instead looking at only potential. You have never seen Laz Montez swing a bat in a major league game, and yet we're well, I don't know about that one.
No, you're spot on. And I think about this all the time, every deadline, the way that fans, and even in the offseason, fans throwing around these trade proposals and everyone being like, no way. There's no way I'm giving up this 18-year-old an A-ball. And it's do you want to win major league games or not? This is part of it. And by the way, especially in Seattle's case, part of the reason why I maintain they should be so aggressive with this is that they're about to add a whole other wave of awesome draft picks. And when you're this good at drafting and developing, you're going to replenish. And no, it's not fun to watch some of these other players go on and become good players, but they haven't been burned that much yet. And I feel as I mentioned, Brody Hopkins is going to be in the futures game. I think he's going to be a pretty good pitcher. Are you enjoying watching Randy Arozarena or not? I mean, that's the whole thing, right? So you got to give to get, and I think that they are a team positioned to give some guys away. And it's, of course, you want to dream on what could be, and the homegrown guys always kind of carry additional sentimental value. Sure. I totally get that. But still, I mean, some of these guys have been in the system for a year or two, and people are like, nope, can't do it. Nope, don't, absolutely not, wouldn't touch it. And I'm like, all right, well, probably not going to get the deal done then. But I do think that the Mariners understand that you do have to give to get, and I think that if the right player becomes available, they're going to be willing to do so.
I agree. He is Yahoo Sports Jordan Shusterman. Check out Baseball Barbiecast, and obviously check out his work at yahoosports.com. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks, guys. See ya.